Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the White Album 2 bonus novel written by Fumiaki Marucho-san. So, in the last episode, we were talking about Kazusa's first week at school. Not ever, but in the general department after she transferred from the music department. And she met Haruki, who was a big busybody and wouldn't leave her the heck alone. And she got so angry. And then she met Takeya, who tried to ask her out, and then she got double angry. And now she's in the middle of goodies, listening to Takeya talk about Haruki and getting really, really angry. Though no one knows she's there yet. Let's go ahead and continue on. All of Kazusa's anger collected around that perfectly remembered name, Haruki Kitahara. Even more than it did around the guy in front of her. Her very first impression of him remained. This is all his damn fault. Yeah, I can't think of any girl who'd want to invite him. Why? Something wrong with him? I mean, you know, right? Yes, I know very well. He's not bad looking though, right? Don't worry, I'll do something about the clothes. No, he looks fine, but isn't he annoying? Yes, unabashedly annoying. Like, he just randomly showed up at my house the other day. He said he looked me up in the address book. That sounds just like him. Haruki is so awkward, and, you know, we never really hear about his classmates disliking him. And it's kind of painful to read this, but it's true. Like, I'm sure he would have been bullied and disliked by people because of the way he acts. Were you absent from school that day, or did you forget something? Well, yeah, okay, I was absent. I was at a big concert the night before. He was probably coming to check up on you then. Yeah, but what about delicacy? Yep, he's fatally lacking in constraint. Did he come in? Did he make you make tea for him? No, he went right home, but like... Yes, but his extreme interference in other people's lives produced only disgust. Sorry, something's come up. I'm gonna go. Huh? And there you have it. Takeya being friends with Haruki just cost him a date because he kept insisting on Haruki coming along. Which is sad. And I'm a little bit proud of Takeya here too, because he was really trying to get his best friend involved. He was really trying to get Haruki to be able to come along. So seeing this side of Takeya is actually really sweet. At that moment, the word she'd been muttering to herself unconsciously fell out of her mouth, because the smooth feather lightness of his speech had suddenly taken on an unpleasant weight. Here's my part of the check. I had fun today. See you. Oh, wait, Izuka-kun? The girl made a slightly flustered attempt to stop him, perhaps having picked up on the same weight that Kazusa had noticed. We haven't settled on anything for the hangout yet. Who's gonna be there? Oh, right, that. What do you mean, oh, right, that? Sorry, there's too much to do right now. See you next time. But he clearly had no interest in listening to what she had to say anymore. So now things have been flipped. Now Takeya doesn't want to hang out with her because of how she's talking about Haruki, which again, very respectable to do. Are you angry? Listen. Huh? You've only been in the same class for a couple of weeks. Don't talk about Haruki like you know him. What are you talking about? Seriously, what was he talking about? Wasn't Haruki the weird one for going to visit someone he'd only been classmates with for a couple weeks? Just because she missed a day? At least wait until you've known him for a whole term. Bye. Wait, hang on. Izuka-kun, you're acting completely different from how you just were. Hey, wait, I said... Izuka-kun quickly walked right past Kazusa. But even though Kazusa was sitting right there, he didn't notice her. He just left the restaurant, a dry look on his face, as though he had completely lost interest in the other girl. For that very reason, Kazusa couldn't take her eyes off him. Because some part of her felt, irrationally, as though that condescending look were directed at her. Oh, yeah, that is irrational. That is a result of your trauma. The hell was that? The frustrated yell let loose by the deserted girl could have come from Kazusa one day before, because she was doing nothing more than representing Kazusa's own impression. The words that came out of her mouth were Kazusa's words. Therefore, Kazusa understood. No, she experienced the same feeling. A blaze of humiliation and an overwhelming desire to run away, as though she'd been doused with cold water. Those were, again, the emotions brought about in her by that Haruki Kitahara, the class chair. Toma. She'd been dreaming. I love in Maruta-san's writing, he's the writer of this novel, he always repeats the same lines at different intervals in the story. That's one of the things about his writing style, and it's really nice. I don't know, it just makes the reader feel good being able to recognize things like that. And so here we are again, Toma waking up. A strange dream that could be seen as wonderful or terrible. She was an ant, sinking in honey. Ooh, I would love to psychoanalyze that. I mean, honey is her sweetness, the thing she's trying to use to keep her dopamine levels up, to keep serotonin running through her brain because she's so depressed and traumatized. And an ant because she's just trying to go unnoticed and be like everyone else. That's really sad. Toma, hey, wake up. Huh? Released from her ultimate choice, life or sugar. Kazusa wiped off the tears and spit that had dribbled out. What? Also, it says out. It should just be out. And turned to face the one who had brought her back to reality. Good morning. It's weird to see you here before class starts. You know, we think of Toma as being this like unparalleled beauty, this perfect epitome of beauty, and yet here she is drooling on her desk. Kind of shows a fun side of her. You don't have to sigh that loudly. It wasn't a sigh. She had been about to say Haruki Kitahara and hurriedly cut herself off. How many years has it been since she last memorized someone's full name? Good morning. Good morning, Toma. The bell's about to ring. Sit up. Her attempt to continue sleeping, even though she was being addressed, the way she begrudgingly stretched, her attitude of zero interest, was half bluffing. To be sure, she didn't want to be interfered with or pried into any further. But even more than that, she didn't want it to be figured out that she had taken a tiny bit of interest in this boy. Ooh, that's an interesting way to put it, because at this point, I guess interest... Okay, it's kind of like if you really, really hate someone and then you decide to like look up their stuff because it's funny to you because you hate them and you can laugh about it. I think that's the kind of interest Kazusa has right now. Like, she hates him so much that he stands out among the rest. Sorry to wake you up, but the deadline for the future course interest survey is today at noon. The teacher asked me to collect them. I assume you threw yours away, so here's a new one. I filled in all the stuff I already knew, like your name. Blatant meddling. Cloying friendliness, transparent nosiness. Compared with Kazusa's previous experiences, this was the most similar to the ulterior motives of the adults who swarmed around her. No, around the Toma family's status, fame, and fortune. And this is very unfortunate, because when you live in a family like that does have status, fame, and money, Of course people are going to want to do favors for you. Of course people are going to want to get close to you. I mean, how do you trust? So that, plus the trauma that she's still not working through, yeah. I mean, how is she supposed to get through that? On her own, mind you. I won't watch you while you're writing, and I'll put it in an envelope before I take it, so you don't have to worry about me seeing anything. Just have it done by lunch, okay? And yet, Kazusa couldn't spot any strain of self-interest in his words or actions, which made her feel indescribably ill at ease. No, don't just roll it up. Fill it in. I don't care about this stuff. As a result, she took an unintentionally defiant attitude. Defiant in a way that was different from a month ago. Lighter, not wholly rejecting his interference. Whether you're planning to go to college, get a job, haven't decided yet, whatever, just write down what you're thinking about now. Or even that you aren't thinking about anything if that's the case. If you've got the time to bother me, why don't you go pick up everyone else's? They all got theirs in by yesterday. Yours is the only one left. Weren't there 3 people absent yesterday? They contacted me and I went to pick their forms up. Even the ones with fevers filled them in. Stupid. As always, she was dizzyingly irritated by what he was doing. Also, the fact that she knows that 3 people specifically were absent yesterday just goes to show she kind of is paying attention. But somehow, strangely, the school's #1 stickler held the admiration of the school's #1 playboy. Kazusa still couldn't comprehend this contradiction. This close friendship between 2 such polar opposite personalities with no apparent common ground. Don't say that. The people in our class are all very reliable. You thought I was talking about them? And because she couldn't comprehend it, she hesitated to hate him more than she did. And I love that we got that scene in this book as well, because in the game, like, we know Takeya and Haruki are best friends, but it almost seems like a joke of a best friend thing because they're always sniping at each other, they're always arguing. But here, that scene just now with Takeya was just so powerful. Like, he really does love Haruki as a best friend. It's amazing. She couldn't shake the worry that she was operating under some enormous misunderstanding. Look, we're attached to a university. You can just write that you're planning to go there when you're done here. They'll bug you way less for that than if you don't write anything. No way I'm going there. She muttered to herself, pretending to talk back, while looking into his face. Casually, but deliberately, with upturned eyes. You don't want to lie? You're more honest than I thought. I'm impressed. Don't jump to your own conclusions and put me on a pedestal. It's annoying. No matter how hard I look at him, he's just normal. Completely ordinary. Not ugly enough to make me want to look away. Not beautiful enough to make me stare. That's an anime protagonist for you in a dating sim. Granted, guys in either of those extremes probably make up less than 1% of all men. If you don't want people to change their opinions of you, it would be much more effective to blend in with everyone else. What? But maybe he's just a tiny bit above average. Maybe he's like a 5.5 or a 6 instead of just a 5. Okay, so these thoughts are definitely leaning more towards the like and less towards the hate of Haruki. You won't have people praising you for being like the delinquent who fed a stray cat, so everyone will evaluate you normally. I don't want anyone evaluating me. As proof, I might not be captivated by him, but looking up at him this close isn't terrible either. Actually, I could probably keep on looking at him like this. I don't recommend doing it while class is in session. I'd rather you finished it before the bell. You really? No. Maybe it's a mistake for me to try to make that judgment in the first place. I've never been interested in guys my age, or of any age for that matter. Not even guys who might be my father. Okay, well, that's a very... Oh, if I were a therapist. Oh, if I were a therapist for White Album 2 characters. She has so much to work through. And even having that thought is something. I don't even have any interest in myself, let alone other people. Why would I try to evaluate someone else? But in that case, where should I look instead? What should I use to decide what's good or bad about him? And what kind of effect will the outcome of that decision have on me? Well, this is a choice that will impact you for a lifetime if you're careless, so I guess you can mull it over a little more. Anyway. Suddenly returning to herself, Kazusa hurriedly dropped her eyes to the paper in front of her and started writing intently. There, that's more like it. Her own revulsion at how she was acting and thinking had sent a chill down her spine. Staring at a boy, pondering him, behaving like some little girl. Oh, it's normal. And she doesn't have a mom to talk things through with her now. She's like gone through puberty and her very first thoughts of a boy are happening. She doesn't have anyone to talk to about it. It's so sad. Kitahara. Anything you don't know how to answer? I've been listening to everything you've said, so listen to me now. Of course, if there's anything bothering you, feel free to come to me with, if I ignore you from now on, don't worry about it. I'm just deeply annoyed and disgusted. Oh, I see. I'm deeply annoyed and disgusted. What a thing to say to somebody. It's like you have your very first crush and you immediately call them disgusting. Ridiculous. I can't be interested in someone else. Completely ridiculous. There, I'm done. Take it. Whoa, don't throw it at me. Turn it over first. I don't care who idolizes this guy. It doesn't matter how much appeal he has as a person. This is a problem that exerts absolutely no influence on the world I live in. I don't really care if you see it. I just wrote, go to Hojo University, like you said. Are you going to do that? I don't know. Am I? Okay. If I don't keep that distinction, it'll only get me in trouble. The overly familiar way he's acting is abnormal in the first place. Yeah, this is giving us a lot more insight into Toma's true thoughts during this, because we never got them. We never got them anywhere else. This scene has been written in other mediums, and yet this is the one that's really showing us, wow, she did like Haruki. Because in the game, it's a little abrupt, right? It's a little abrupt that she suddenly likes this guy, the class representative. But here we can see it slowly developing, and I love that. I love that about books. If I go easy on him, there's no knowing how he might take advantage of me. Are we done here? If we are, I'm going back to sleep. Oh, hang on, sorry. One more thing. What? I get it, okay? If you ignore me from now on, I won't think about it too much. Oh, yeah. She'd meant to draw the line. And yet, the moment she heard his words of resignation, an odd flicker of displeasure came into Kazusa's face. So, you don't have to worry about it if I keep trying to talk to you either. Huh? She'd meant to draw the line. And yet, the moment she heard his words, entirely lacking in resignation, blatant displeasure splashed itself all over Kazusa's face. Good morning, Toma. Look how nice the weather is today. Wait, just a second, Kitahara. I didn't promise. I'm going to do what you said, so you can do this one thing for me, right? You didn't just ask for one thing. How shameless can you be? Toma, why would you say that now? There's no beating him. There's no beating Haruki's stubbornness. Even if your name is Kazusa Toma, there is no beating his stubbornness. Kazusa cursed. Cursed her own foolishness in going lenient on someone this irritating and overly friendly. Over the course of the next month, Kazusa gradually came to understand that those who depended on Haruki, Kitahara, and those who avoided him were divided into two clear groups with clear trends. As Kazusa herself was a newbie to the general course this year, she struggled at first to get a clue. But once she realized it, it was a conclusion easily reached just by looking over the student roster handed out each year. It wasn't a matter of gender, grades, or personality, but rather of the makeup of last year's classes and the year before last year's. That is to say, a difference between those who had experienced being in class with him before, as first or second years, and those who hadn't. That's tough, because Haruki, at this point, and I say at this point very seriously, he's a good person. You know, he hasn't done anything horrible. Yes, he's annoying, but other than that, he hasn't done anything that bad. The latter tried to distance themselves from Haruki Kitahara, hated the way he meddled, reacted negatively to his lectures, and were utterly exasperated the way he continued to involve himself with them regardless. And the former had given up trying to fight Haruki Kitahara from the get-go, and trusted him fully. What demonstrated this clearly to her was some trouble that got stirred up with the boy who sat in front of her, whom Kitahara called Hayasaka. Hayasaka, who had been appointed against his will to the sports day committee at the class's endorsement, had been skipping required meetings, neglecting to make preparations, and even with the event a mere week away, the players participating in each match had yet to be decided. He had, in other words, created an absolutely wretched situation. I mean, if you volunteer someone for a position they don't want, obviously they're not going to try very hard for it. In this moment of crisis for the class, Kitahara swooped in without panicking, without fussing, and backed him up completely. Well, maybe the percentage of the arrangements he made was a little too high to call it backing up. Kitahara attended all of the necessary meetings in Hayasaka's place, finished getting the program in order, got the private consent of all the main members to select the athletes, and on his own brought things to a point at which all that remained was a class-wide vote. And after carrying all of this out silently, he at last broke his silence and began lecturing Hayasaka at length after homeroom. I mean, he deserves it. Not that he wanted to do it, but once he was in that position, he should have gone through with it. Because it's just going to bring a bunch of trouble to other people. Hayasaka, who had wholly lost face, refused to back down even though he was plainly entirely in the wrong. And rather than just ignore Kitahara's lecture, he lashed back outright, bringing the atmosphere to an explosive state. Kitahara didn't fight him back, however, or act shocked, just earnestly pointed out all of his problems and suggested that they work on sports day together. But unable to back down once he had gone on the offensive, Hayasaka got even more heated. Dude, Haruki is definitely the type of character that would have gotten beat up in school. Guaranteed he would have messed with the wrong people. And those who remained optimistic in this critical situation were the former, Kitahara's previous victims who had been in class with him before. They had known from the start how to get along with Kitahara, and they understood him extraordinarily well. As a result, they didn't freak out about this flare-up, and they treated Hayasaka with an open mind. Or, well, they handled it okay, but were hazy in a few regards. All they could offer was support that wasn't really support. Getting angry is pointless. If you take everything he says seriously, you'll end up pulling all your hair out. He wants the short end of the stick, so please just settle this now. 1 week later, saddled with these problems, sports day took place. That day, Kazusa came to understand yet another thing. After skipping all of the events and killing time in music room number 2, she looked out the window at the evening schoolyard and saw a group of noisy third years entering the post-sports day ground with drinks. The most boisterous among them were from their own class, Class E. And the most roused up of all of them, Hayasaka, had a drink in one hand, probably tea, and the other arm slung around Kitahara, who was drinking quietly, probably tea. I love how they say probably tea. Haruki probably has tea. Hayasaka, I'm not so sure. It looked from here like Kitahara was still lecturing him about something, the same as ever, but now Hayasaka, as though in a scant few days, he had come to understand, simply, smoothly, let the attitude of lecture pass, roaring with laughter. That's so nice. It's so nice to see people getting along with Haruki. It just takes time. You have to get past that super annoying, I don't know, personality, I guess. I guess that's his personality. At least wait until you've known him for a full term. Kazusa didn't want to remember what the shallow guy had said, but it came back to her anyway. Starting the next week, the vibe in the classroom was markedly different. The stiffness in the air between Haruki and a certain group of students had vanished, and they all began turning to him readily, pushing the most trivial things on him and letting the forthcoming lectures go in one ear and out the other, laughing every time. And this is all well and good if it isn't taking advantage of him. But as we see from the introductory chapter, Haruki takes on way too many responsibilities. And now we're seeing people are like, oh yeah, I'll just give it to this guy. And then his lecturers don't even touch them. So, I mean, that's not super healthy either. That's just on the other end of the spectrum. Were that all, there might have been the negative possibility of his falling to the status of class handyman. However, the attitude and mood of those all around was thoroughly bright, with no sarcasm or spite anymore, and any inclination to ridicule or reject his sincerity had been purged. Which, yes, is true, they're positive about it, but that doesn't make it healthy to pile on all the work to one person. And, most notably, Hayasaka, one of the primary parties concerned, had begun to address Kitahara as Haruki. And in response, Kitahara had begun to call him Chikashi as well. Everyone acknowledged Haruki Kitahara as an indispensable member of the class. And with Chikashi, we never really got to know him at all in the game. I mean, other than one of the guys in the class. So hearing this backstory, hearing how much he hated Haruki at first, is super interesting. Kind of rounds out his character a little bit. Actually, none of them were probably aware of that constructive shift in sentiment, acknowledgement. They all assumed that they were handling their nagging chairman the same as they always had. Kazusa was the only one who recognized the change in atmosphere as a change, because she was the least necessary person in the class. No, that's such a sad thing to say. Don't say that about yourself. My God. The only outsider watching the sports day event from high up, and the girl who spent the most time looking at Haruki Kitahara. For the past while, Kazusa had never taken her eyes off of him. Making use of the fact that she was ignored by the rest of the class, she made a big show of pretending to nap during class and during breaks, face down on the desk, while through the gaps between her arms, she watched the side of his face. That's kind of creepy. Adorable, but creepy. Picked up all the voices whispering around him. Had her mother, who had poured so much money into the skills she cultivated through playing the piano, breadth of view, acuteness of ear, known that they were being put to this use, what would she have thought? Oh, she's adorable and hopeless. So, before we get into that long list of things that Kazusa thinks about Haruki, we're going to stop off there for now. So, thank you so much for joining me on this chapter of the novel written by Fumiaki Maruto, and I will see you on the next part. Until then, hope you take care. See you!